US President Joe Biden met the wife and daughter of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, who died last week, and expressed his heartfelt condolences. During the meeting in San Francisco, Biden expressed his admiration for Navalny's extraordinary courage and his legacy of fighting against corruption and democracy in Russia. Biden also affirmed that the United States will announce major new sanctions against Russia on Friday in response to Navalny's death, Moscow's war in Ukraine. 47-year-old Alexei Navalny felt unconscious and died suddenly on Friday after a walk at the Polar Wolf Penal Colony, where he was serving a 3-decade-long sentence. The United States is all set to impose fresh sanctions on over 500 targets, marking the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as Washington seeks to hold Moscow accountable over the ongoing war and the death of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Now, the action taken in partnership with other countries will be targeted at Russia's military-industrial complex. Deputy U.S. Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo said hundreds of sanctions will be released in the U.S., and it's not just America taking these actions. The fresh sanctions by Washington are aimed at ensuring Russia cannot get access to the goods required to make weapons and slowing down Russia's access to revenues. On January 21, 2024, Akul Dhawan, an 18-year-old Indian origin student at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign in the US, was found deceased hours after being reported missing. His parents filed a complaint with the university police and questioned them about this search and protocol they followed in the case. Information collected so far supports the initial belief that the death was accidental and no foul play occurred. Police said that there were signs of hypothermia when his body was found on a university building's porch. Acute alcohol intoxication and prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures also significantly contributed to his death. In 2024, 7 young men of Indian and Indian American descent met untimely deaths under varying circumstances in the United States. The race for the White House is heating up. The early voting has wrapped up in South Carolina. All eyes are on the crucial Republican presidential primary on Saturday, where former President Donald Trump and state's former governor, Nikki Haley, will face off. The final push for the South Carolina GOP primary is in full swing. Now, with a day to go for the primary, Nikki Haley is not backing down in the race. As a former South Carolina governor, Haley hopes a strong home state showing will boost her chances for the Republican nomination. Despite New Hampshire's primary electorate going against her, where she lost to Trump by 11 percentage points, Haley has sounded resilient in the face of her underdog status. Hundreds gathered near the Eiffel Tower in Paris and staged protest against actions of the Russian President Vladimir Putin and his government in the wake of Alexei Navalny's death. Navalny's mother has accused the Russian investigators of planning to bury her son in secret, without a funeral. Navalny's aides and family have accused President Vladimir Putin of having him killed, an allegation the Kremlin has rejected. According to the aides, the death certificate shown to his mother stated that Navalny died of natural causes. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was serving prison sentence of more than 30 years on the charges of fraud and extremist activities. His death has sparked global outrage and protests across European nations. The Russian Defense Ministry has released a video showing its soldiers walking across the Ukrainian city of Avdiivka. The Russian army personnel were seen mopping up the recently captured city. Moscow reported full control of the town about 15 kilometers now north of Donetsk on February 17th. President Vladimir Putin called the capture an absolute success. Ukraine said it withdrew its soldiers to save them from being fully surrounded after months of fierce fighting. Brazilian President Lula da Silva welcomed Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on the sidelines of G20 Ministers Summit. Lavrov is in Brazil for a meeting of foreign ministers as part of Latin American nations' presidency of the G20 group of advanced economies. According to a statement issued by the Brazilian government, Lula told Lavrov he will attend a summit between the developing countries that form the BRICS bloc in October this year in Moscow. Lula also held a meeting with the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Wednesday, in which they discussed the G20 summit to peace efforts in Ukraine and the Gaza Strip. One person has died and 15 people have been injured in an overnight raid that was carried out by the Israeli forces in West Bank's Jenin on Thursday. The figures of casualties were issued by the Palestinian Health Ministry. The Hamas's health ministry reported that around 4,000 Palestinians had been killed in the occupied West Bank prior to the latest attack by the Israeli army. Violence in the West Bank has been surging for over a year due to near daily Israeli military raids and settler attacks. So far, 29,000 Palestinians, including women and children, have been killed by Israel's armed offensive in the Gaza Strip. A vessel opened fire at the coast near a camp for displaced Palestinians in Rafah, firing various shots in the direction of what appears to be a small boat. In the footage, a small boat is approaching the coast and the firing vessel sailing away after the shots have been fired. The incident comes at a time when Israel has threatened to launch a full-blown attack on Rafah, at Gaza's southern edge, despite international pleas and growing demand for a humanitarian ceasefire. Israel's armed offensive in the Gaza Strip has killed nearly 30,000 civilians, including children and women. Now, according to the Hamas's health ministry, is where this information comes from. Iran-affiliated Houthis militias conducted 3 major military operations, including targeting the islander ship in the Gulf of Aden with naval missiles and Israel's Eilat with ballistic missiles and drones. In a televised speech, Houthi spokesperson also said that the rebel outfit also targeted an American destroyer in the Red Sea with a number of drones. Houthi militants have launched repeated strikes in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden since November as a show of solidarity for Palestinians. The rebel group's strikes have disrupted a shipping lane that accounts for about 12% of the global maritime traffic and international trade, forcing shipping firms to take a longer and expensive route around Africa. The border forces in Iraq have started deploying units and building new posts on hilly areas in the Nvidia district near the Turkish border. The new military station will be equipped with modern technologies to control the borders effectively and to confront outlaws. The deployment comes after Turkey intensified its military operations and shelling on northern Iraq. 2 civilians were killed in the Turkish bombardment on February 20th. Turkey has conducted numerous cross-border offensives against the PKK militias in northern Iraq. The US Justice Department has appointed its first AI-focused official. Jonathan Mayer will serve as Chief Science and Technology Advisor and Chief AI Officer. A professor who researches technology and law at Princeton University, Mayer will advise on AI's impact on law enforcement and the justice system. Not just that, Mayer's role will include advising Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Justice Department leaders on issues related to emerging technologies. This includes how to responsibly integrate AI into the department's investigations and criminal prosecutions. Mayer will lead a new board advising on AI ethics and effectiveness and aims to recruit more tech experts. He has previously worked as the technology advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. Also in other tech news, Google has temporarily halted its AI model Gemini from creating images of people. This is due to a major backlash over inaccurate depictions in the images generated. Gemini, which is similar to ChatGPT, crafts lifelike images based on user prompts. Despite being trained to avoid harmful prompts and promote diversity, users criticized its tendency to overemphasize women and people of color, often placing them in historically incorrect scenarios. Users online ridiculed the chatbot for being excessively diverse and ignoring historical facts. Google acknowledged the issue, stating that they are working to improve the depictions. Now, the company plans to pause people's image generation and release an enhanced version soon. The Food and Drug Administration has issued a warning about smartwatches and smart rings that claim to measure blood sugar levels without pricking the skin. In a communication written by the US agency, FDA has not authorized, cleared or approved any smartwatch or smart ring that is intended to measure or estimate blood glucose values on its own. The FDA has asked consumers, patients and caregivers to stay away from such devices. The Food and Drug Administration has also asked people to report if a company is spotted selling wearables with these claims through the agency's reporting form. Banking giant Standard Chartered has rewarded shareholders with dividends and a fresh $1 billion buyback as profit rose by 18%. The bank's pre-tax profit for 2023 rose to $5.09 billion, in line with forecasts. The lender booked 13% income growth in 2023 in constant currency terms. But the bank has announced modest growth forecasts due to its exposure to China's markets. The bank said it expects income to grow at 5 to 7% in 2024, which is lower than the previous estimate of 8 to 10%. Also in other business news, German chemical giant BASF will slash another $1.1 billion in annual costs citing weak demand and high energy costs. Now, the cost-cutting measures also highlight the country's economic woes. The annual cost savings will be reached by the end of 2026, affecting both production and administrative activities at its largest chemical complex in Germany. The company added that its earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization, or EBITDA, would rebound to between $8.66 billion and $9.22 billion in 2024. Nvidia has identified Huawei as a top competitor in several categories for the first time in a filing. The US company said that China's Huawei competes in supplying chips designed for artificial intelligence. The company has also identified Huawei as a cloud service company, designing its own hardware and software to improve AI computing. The Chinese company's main product, the 910-bit chip, is its main rival to Nvidia's A100 chip. Analysts have estimated China's AI chip market to be worth $7 billion. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon has sold $150 million worth of his shares in the bank. This sale is part of a plan announced last October, in fact, with Dimon intending to sell 1 million of his 8.6 million shares. So far, he sold 824,778 shares. The bank's market capitalization exceeds $527 billion. Dimon's compensation for 2023 increased by 4.3% to $36 million. Despite the sale, it's clarified that there are no plans for leadership succession, and Dimon isn't currently planning to sell more stock, though it is a possibility in the future. JP Morgan reported its largest ever annual profit last year and acquired its first Republic Bank in May, contributing to its profitability.